Right, why don't we call this work session to order? And Councilwoman Bevins. All right, if the council could turn to page 3, why don't we call up our Director of Department of Aging, Ms. Laura Riley, page 3, Bill 43-19. And good afternoon, Ms. Riley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council. We are here today. The administration is requesting a supplemental appropriation of federal funds totaling $52,136 to the Caregiver Support Program Gifts and Grants Fund. The funds will be used to provide additional support and assistance to family members and older adults who provide unpaid care for seniors, the disabled, as well as grandparents over the age of 55 raising minor grandchildren.
Great. Any questions or comments from the council? Looks easy. Thanks so much. All righty. How about Major Dennis Delp from the Police Department? Council, page 19, Fiscal Matter 6. Page 19. And good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councilman and Council members. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with Sandale Construction for regular lead abatement and cleaning services at the police indoor firing range located at 2001 Delaney Valley Road in Timonium. If approved, the contract will continue through July 31st, 2020 and will renew automatically for 4 additional one-year periods with the option to further extend the initial term. Compensation may not exceed $585,000 for the entire 5-year, 3-month term, including the renewal and extension periods. Contractor will provide all labor, materials, supervision, equipment, and incidentals for lead abatement at the police indoor firing range. County awarded the contract through a competitive procurement process based on low bid from 3 bids received.
Any questions or comments? Councilman Koch?
Thank you. This contract, it says that and will renew automatically for 4 additional one-year periods with the option to further extend the initial term. There's a new state-of-the-art gun range that's being built along Liberty Road, correct? Red Run Boulevard. And I understand it is state-of-the-art, it's the best. Does the county expect to be contracting with them to use that facility and not need to use this anymore?
At this time, there's no movement to do that at this time. There's a lot of moving parts to using an outside range. Currently, right now, the the police department, the sheriff's department, and corrections and ATF all utilize our range currently. And in order to have an outside facility, we would have to transport equipment, ammunition, and have additional staff in order to have 2 locations. And the biggest issue would be right now with moving forward with that is from a scheduling standpoint. We're in control when having our own facility. We are in control of scheduling. If you're using an outside resource like that, when things pop up and you have issues like we've recently had with our previous firearm and we need to retrain the entire agency quickly, it becomes cumbersome when you're using someone else's outside facility and you have to reschedule things.
Do you think that sometime in the future, because this is a state-of-the-art facility which is going to be used by, I believe, Montgomery County Police, and they're the only ones I know so far, and others, do you think that the county will show an interest in signing a contract for use of this facility?
I know the county is in the middle of a strategic planning for capital projects in the future, but I don't know how that would fare out with the ultimate long-term plans are with the county government. But I do know that they're in the middle of a strategic planning initiative right now for capital projects.
So, Mr. Bostwick, with this legislation, if it passes, we will need to renew automatically for 4 additional one-year periods. I mean, is that not flexible at all?
I think it is flexible.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So Okay, good, thank you. So if we do contract with this new facility on Red Run Boulevard, then we can not, well, if the county thinks it's the best thing to do, not.
I think it's written in such a way that we wouldn't be forced to renew the
Good.
contract.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
If I could,
Sure.
Chair, I think some of the other benefits that I think will come clear is the new facility that they're building on Red Run Boulevard called a Gundry Club. It'll have one of the largest indoor ranges, and they're probably pretty close to the East Coast, probably clearly within the Delaware, Maryland, Virginia area. And there may be opportunities for not necessarily training everyone, but some of the special ops folks might want to come there. I'm not sure if you heard about it or seen it, but they're not done yet. But they have some state-of-the-art, what is it called, simulators. They have a range that's like super long for indoors. And there's a lot of other opportunities there in terms of classroom space, stuff like that. So, something to think about.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Great, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Mr. Chair,
Councilman Crandall.
just real quick, just for clarification, my colleagues here on the end of the dais think we know the answer, but so it's September 3rd we voted to approve a contract for similar services for the outdoor range. So this is just for the indoor range.
Correct, and that
All
was
right.
a different company.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. All righty. Why don't we next call Dr. Gregory Branch, and maybe we'll start with page 16, amendment number 3 to the lease, and that's part of the fiscal matters, fiscal matter 5. And good afternoon, Dr. Branch.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay. Good afternoon. The administration is requesting support for a third extension of a lease for our Chartley Park Center, which is our WIC location located in Reisterstown. This is going to be a 2-year extended term beginning in November 1st, 2019.
Any questions or comments? Everybody good? That was easy. How about, Dr. Branch, we have one more, which is on page 1, Bill 42-19.
Okay. So Bill 42-19 proposes to increase the age at which a person may legally purchase tobacco products from 18 to 21 with a limited exception. And the bill will be congruent with the new state law, which is House Bill 1169, which actually went into effect on today. The limited exception is for an individual who is an active duty member of the military, at least 18 years old, and presents a valid military identification. The bill also updates the several definitions regarding tobacco products and e-cigarettes to include electronic smoking devices, electronic hookahs, vapor pens, and any components or parts therein. The Department of Health has overseen the implementation of our tobacco enforcement program here in Baltimore County, and the enforcement program has proven to be very efficient in reducing sales to minors. Our Baltimore our violation rate in federal fiscal year 15 was 54.7%. That meant that if you go into any of our stores, 54 or 55% of the time, a minor could actually purchase tobacco products in 2015. But in federal fiscal year 19, for Baltimore County, that was 0%. So the state law goes into effect, as I mentioned, on today, and it will be illegal for retailers to sell to individuals under the age of 21.
Councilman Jones?
Did I hear you correct in saying that it's illegal for someone to purchase tobacco products under the age of 21 unless you're a veteran?
If you are active.
So we care less about them than the other kids?
Well, I don't think we care less about them. What happens is the fact that um, the proprietor actually has the authority to sell to anyone above the age of 21. They do not have to sell to someone who's less than 21. That is a stipulation that that person may be able to purchase, but the proprietor does not have to sell to them. So that many a time that's going to happen on the base.
Okay, so I'm a little confused. Maybe I didn't ask it right. I thought I heard you say less than 21, if you're a veteran, you can buy cigarettes.
If you're on active duty, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Patoka, then Councilman Catch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Branch, is there something magical about the age of 21 as opposed to the age of 18 or maybe the age of 26 where there's health insurance implications?
I think that there is not a magical thing about the age of 21. However, it is a significant difference between 21 and 18. What happens is the fact that when you have a person who's 18 years old who's able to buy tobacco products, that person may be still in high school. And when they're still in high school, they have a relationship with some of the younger students. So I may have a senior who's 18 years old who's actually befriended a sophomore who's 16 years old. And what we know is that they will actually purchase these tobacco products for their friends. But to have a person who's 21 years old, the likelihood of that high schooler or that young person to get access to tobacco is much, much less.
That makes sense. Is there any nexus with health insurance coverage? And that's why I went to the age of 26. Because if someone is on their parents' health insurance and you have to identify whether you're a smoker or not, and that changes your rate, I just wonder if here in Baltimore County we can't be a little more parent-friendly and even push it further.
Well, I will say to you that as the health officer, as a physician, obviously what I say is no one should be smoking cigarettes.
Agreed.
Period. Right? But we live in this country. We live in this county. And so we do recognize that some people are going to do what they want to do, right? And so at this point now, I think it's wonderful that we've gone from 18 to 21, and maybe in the future we can go to 26, and then we can go to 70.
It's amazing to me that we can breathe relatively clean air, but some people choose that they would prefer to breathe polluted air. It's illogical.
Any other
Thank you,
questions?
Dr. Branch.
Councilman Catch?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the state level, the legislature changed the law in regard to cigarettes and e-smoking. Does the state enforce that law in Baltimore County? Do they send out inspectors?
Okay. So we actually do a lot of enforcement here, and then the state monitors for the federal government within our jurisdiction. So when I give you sign-on numbers and I tell you that we've gone from 54.7% to 0%, that is not our numbers. That's when the state came in for the federal government, and they actually looked at our jurisdiction, and they gave us those numbers.
Now,
so yes, they do come in.
They do. Okay. The state of Maryland removed the section regarding the sale of cigarettes. They removed the section that gives the proprietor the ability to use as a reason for not carding someone that they carded the individual before and remember them, or I don't know, somebody, I forget what the other part was, somebody, I don't know, vouches for them or something like that. We still have that in the county law. So it looks to me as we have two standards. We have one situation where the state, you must card somebody if they appear to be, over 26 or whatever it is. And that's it. In the county, though, you must card them unless you've carded them sometime in the past, and I forget what the other exception is. So you're putting the proprietors at a disadvantage because you have state people coming in with different standards than county people. So I'd like your opinion on removing that section out of the county law so that we'll be the same as the state law.
Well, the more consistent we can be with the state law, I think it's wonderful. But I will say to you at this point now, the way we enforce,
Right.
basically, if you sell to a minor, period, we have an issue with that.
Well,
So the fact that you did not or did card some, the factor in that is you cannot sell to a minor. So if in your mind you thought there was a possibility that you had carded that person before and you thought that they were older and that person is still a minor, then you still have a problem with us. So I don't think it makes that much of a difference from a practical perspective. You cannot sell to a minor, period.
but the law set, and the other part is right, if you supposedly as a proprietor have knowledge that this person is a certain age or above a certain age, then that's an excuse not to ask for identification. So again, I just would, I think it's smart for us to make the law the same as the state law so that with enforcement, we're not going to have two different standards for enforcement. And I don't know if the administration has looked at this and has any position on taking out that county language, which would put us in the same position as the state. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, okay, so the administration, okay, would be good with that. I just think it's smart to have the same standard.
Okay.
And, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Crandall?
Sure. Dr. Branch, off the subject of Bill 4219, how concerned are we with this sort of national trend and the deaths that have occurred with unregulated substances going into these electronic devices? There's a large article in the Sun paper over the weekend. Are we seeing an uptick in that in Baltimore County? How do you feel about this issue? And
We are very concerned about it. This is now a new public health threat. What's happening is the fact that there are people who are supposedly, quote, vaping, and they're vaping with an unknown substance. When we talk about vaping, we're talking about vaping, and the vapor is actually water. However, when the vapor is not water, it's actually aerosolized. And that's where the damage is really coming to the lungs. And what we're thinking at this time, from a medical perspective, and we don't have all the answers just yet, is that they're putting in vitamin E, an oil, into the apparatus, and they're inhaling that. That oil, when it goes into the lung, is gaseous. However, once it settles in a lung, it becomes liquefied. And that person is literally drowning with that water in their lungs. And you see a whiteout. So we are very, very concerned about that. Specifically for Baltimore County, we've had 2 instances of people who have gone to the hospital regarding that. And what we've done is we've actually notified our hospitals and our physicians to ensure that if anybody comes in symptomatic, the first thing we ask them to do is to try to confiscate whatever they were actually smoking so we can get that and get it over to the state lab so we can figure out exactly what the person was inhaling. So yes, it is a public health threat. Yes, we are concerned about it. And yes, we've seen a couple of people in Baltimore County who have suffered from that. We have not had any deaths as of today.
These substances, are they available on a retail basis, or would you have to get them from a medical cannabis dispensary, or?
Okay. So to tell you the truth, we're not really too sure exactly where all these substances are coming from, and that's why it's so important that we get the providers, when they are diagnosing it, to confiscate the stuff immediately. So we're around the country that we're trying to do that to figure out what it's coming from. We think that much of what it's coming from is what people are actually putting in to this, as opposed to what they're purchasing from that is FDA regulated.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Branch.
Councilman Marks?
Yeah, I'll echo Councilman Crandall's concerns as well. You know, I do a lot of teaching in schools, and I know that in other public school systems, and I'm sure ours feels the same way, this is a real concern. I mean, it is so easy for these students to conceal the Juul cartridges. Yeah, and I know that there are school districts around the country actually looking at suing that manufacturer. It is very difficult to enforce in schools. It is certainly, it creates a toxic environment that I think should concern us all. So thank you very much for your comments.
Other questions, or Councilman Jones?
Just to be clear, so I can understand, I've been following it as closely as I can, but the issue is really people putting in foreign substances into the device as opposed to the FDA-approved product that people are selling. Is that correct?
Yes, but I want to be very clear as the health officer. What we're seeing in regard to the immediate lung effects that people are suffering from, you are correct. We believe it's because people are putting things in it. But I want to be very clear that the tobacco and the nicotine that are in those Juuls or in those electronic devices is not good for our body. It's extraordinarily addictive. And so, therefore, it's not only addictive, where it can potentially cause a cancer, because we can't prove it does not. It's also the gateway drug to so many other issues that we have from substance abuse. So I think that as a health officer, I want to make it very, very clear that irrespective of what you are using, the Juul or something that is not FDA approved, I think it all is not healthy for human.
Any,
Do you think there's some room for legislation in that area here in Baltimore County?
I think we can always have conversations, definitely.
any other questions or comments for Dr. Branch? We do have one public speaker, but want to make sure the council's good? Everybody good? All right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Branch. And we do have one public speaker, Miss Laura Hale. And Laura, if you'd like to come on up, you have up to 3 minutes to speak right at the microphone. Thank you for coming in. And good afternoon as well.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Laura Hale, and I'm the Director of Government Relations for the American Heart Association. Just here today to, show our support for this legislation. We're extremely supportive of Tobacco 21 legislation and are happy to see the county working towards this. We just had a couple of little things that we wanted to talk about. One is that we agree with Councilman Koch on specifically the removal in 13-12-103.1, the removal of D, which is the idea that an owner or other distributor is not required to verify the age. We really want to make sure that everyone is IDing, and there isn't this loophole or argument that they could argue that, oh, I knew the person. And we really would love to see that removed. I also wanted to add to the reason of why 21, and the American Heart Association has looked into the research, and 95% of adult smokers started before the age of 21. So it's not a magic number. It's specifically because if we see smokers and they never start smoking before 21, they're less likely to become daily users of this product. And we see this as an extremely important step and are happy to see this. We additionally have concerns about the e-cigarettes that are on the market. The FDA has allowed them on the market, but they haven't actually done what's called a pre-market review. So they're actually not fully approved. So nobody fully knows what is in these products. What we have found that's in these products are dangerous, addictive, and to give you an example, specifically speaking to Juul and stuff from their website, is that a single Juul pod has as much nicotine in it as an entire pack of cigarettes. And so when we see youth that are using these products, They are getting nicotine at an extremely high rate and higher than we see. So they may go through multiple pods in a day, and that's like going through multiple packs of cigarettes. And so we're extremely concerned about the addiction of our young people, and it's why Tobacco 21 is so important to us to get them out of the hands of youth smokers. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All righty. Well, let's keep moving forward then. And why don't we call up Mr. Tom Kiefer? And if the council wants to look at Fiscal Matter 3, which is the addendum in your packet. It's actually the addendum. It's the contract for their on-call sewer flow monitoring services. And good afternoon, Mr. Kiefer. How you doing?
This is really
Good afternoon, Chairman. Doing fine, thank you, Council. So the administration is requesting approval of 2 contracts to provide on-call sewer flow and groundwater monitoring services throughout the county. This work is needed not only for the consent decree, but in conjunction with all the work we have already done and the flow monitoring of work we've done to find out whether it's been effective, as well as provide additional flow monitoring to help with the calibration of the model that we have for the sewer system. The 2 contractors are ADS Environmental Services and Johnson, Mirmoran, and Thompson, which are both acquired through competitive bid. And if approved, the contracts will continue through June 30th of 2021 with automatic renewals for 3 additional 1-year periods. And compensation for both contracts combined may not exceed $23,807,873 for the entire 5-year, 3-month term.
Councilman Jones?
Yes, I do have a question. I was reviewing the documentation, and I noticed there is a difference in the bids from the 2 companies. And I was wondering, how will the department assign the work between the 2 contractors?
So generally the work on the bids have nothing reflective in the difference in the way it's how they priced out their services. So we'll be choosing not just on which one had the lower bid, but depending on where the particular type of expertise is, on the type of monitoring we need, because there's different types of flow meters and different types of analyses. So we rely on going to the engineering department to go to whomever has the greater expertise in the area that's needed.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Patoka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will either of these contracts be monitoring the flows of the interceptor that is beneath Lake Roland, where there are 3 sewage pipes that enter an interceptor beneath Lake Roland? Will this be included in that monitoring service?
So that area already has 45 monitors in it.
Okay.
We may be supplementing those monitors as needed to identify any sources of inflow and infiltration that might help us remediate any extraneous flow that's in the system that we want to have removed. So we're working on that. As a matter of fact, just came from a meeting prior to this to discuss there and other parts of the county pulling together that program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, why don't we do the next one then, Mr. Kiefer? And so that would be page 13 and Fiscal Matter 4, Paul's Trucking Equipment.
All right. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with Paul's Trucking and Equipment Repair to provide on-call snow removal and salt application services. They previously had a contract with the county that is now expired, so this is just a new contract, same standard contract that we have with all of our snow removal contractors. It'll commence on November 1st of this year and continue through April 30th of 2020 and automatically renew for 9 additional 1-year periods. And of course, the compensation for this contract, together with all other contract services, may not exceed the amount appropriated for snow removal and salt application services during the entire 9-year and 6-month term.
Councilman Patoka.
I just want to say that I'm really pleased that the snow removal contracts are coming before the county council.
got that one.
All right. Anybody else? Everybody good? All right. Thank you, Mr. Kiefer.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. All right. Now I see Mike Field is not here today, so I see Mr. Gaskins. And why don't we start, Mr. Gaskins, why don't we start with the addendum, which is the contract for Skates Legal Group. And again, for the council, that's in your addendum. Mr. Gaskins.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the council. The administration requests council approval for a contract to hire legal services to replace former Assistant County Attorney Jason Frank, who was, in our opinion, one of Maryland's premier elder law attorneys who retired after 30 years of service to the residents of Baltimore County, particularly its senior citizens. Mr. Frank worked about 1 day per week in the Department of Aging. The Office of Law felt that because the legal issues were specialized, it preferred to hire a new attorney to replace Mr. Frank rather than try to cover his duties with current staff. It was decided, however, that the county would seek to contract rather than hire a new lawyer as an employee. The county issued a request for proposals and received 4 proposals for the provision of part-time legal services to the Department of Aging. After review of the proposals, the county decided to contract with Howard County-based Skates Legal Group and the law office of Robin C. Skates. The law office found that Ms. Skates' proposal was comprehensive and addressed all the elements of the RFP completely. Ms. Skates has worked with state and local government for over 25 years. She met all of the relevant experience in every aspect for elder law over the last 5 years. It is anticipated that only Ms. Skates will do the work, although that was not a requirement. The county felt that the price of the contract was in the best interest of the county. Ms. Skates has not yet performed any work under this contract. It is anticipated that the initial term will run until July 31st, 2020. The county reserves the right to renew the same terms of the contract for 4 additional renewal terms. And we think that Ms. Skates will provide excellent legal services.
Councilman Jones?
Yes, I'm curious. I'm curious about the logistics of, number one, I certainly support the legal services that we provide to our seniors, but I also know we have quite a few senior centers. So I'm curious, how do we allocate the resources in terms of legal services to our seniors? Do it?
Yeah, there's specific issues. Our lawyer works primarily through the director.
Okay.
And as issues are funneled to the director, then legal counsel will advise.
Okay, so this is not services to the seniors that come to the senior centers?
No.
Okay.
Correct. Councilmember Jones, this is more in the line if an issue should come up relative to services above and beyond what they would receive as participants in the center. The types of services that then elevate where we might need to work hand-in-hand with HHS. It might end up into adult guardianship. It's that kind of stuff. It's not the day-to-day consult a lawyer kind of scenario.
It would be nice if we could expand that service in some way, or at least provide it maybe on a super part-time basis. Maybe having, I was guest over at the courthouse and they had an attorney in the lobby. I know in the community sometimes we have a lawyer in the library.
Exactly.
And it would be nice if we can expand that to sometime have perhaps a lawyer in the senior center.
Mm-hmm. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I had the pleasure of meeting with the library staff last week, and they talked about the lawyer in the library model and how well received that was. So as a part of collaboration across agencies, that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Thank you.
Councilman Katz?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the individual that provides the services is retiring?
The former attorney retired.
Now, is he being replaced? Is that a full-time position? Is he being replaced?
No, it was a part-time position, one day per week.
1 day.
in
Oh,
general.
so he didn't work for the county the other 4 days?
Well, he wasn't employed, but he didn't work full-time with the county.
So,
Mr. Chair, or I'm sorry, Mr. Katch, Mr. Frank has or had his own law office.
Yes.
Frank, and I can't remember
Frank.
the other name.
Frank
and
and
Shakur, that's right. And
Okay.
but he was, I think, employed very part-time as an assistant county
Gotcha.
attorney because he specializes in elder law, which is a specialty. I think not in the realm of what a county attorney's office would normally do. So I think that's.
I was hoping it was a situation where he would be replaced, that we have this service over and above, that okay.
Well, actually, when the team brought this to my attention, the issue was the arrangement that we had with the individual was never a competitive process. It was, okay, we need this service, so we'll do this because this individual had been an attorney with the county, but it was the workload at that time or current time was minimal, that he was working 1 day per month or per week. 1 day per week was 4 days in a month, which did not appear to be a employee-employer appropriate relationship when you can contract for those kind of services. But I thought it was in our best interest to competitively look for an individual for this service as opposed to just picking another person and having that arrangement, because it's not the case that it's a half-time FTE in our current structure. So it was a competitive procurement that was put out.
Yeah, I think legal services for seniors is a very good idea, and well, we can talk about it another time, but
Sure.
I would like to see an expansion of these services, definitely.
Mr. Chair. Councilman Jones?
No, I guess wanted to take an opportunity to, congratulate Jason Frank, the
Yes.
attorney, on his retirement, I guess. But I do know he lives in my district, and I know that he's been a strong advocate for seniors for many, many years. And he's done a lot of work here for us, as well as work down there at the state legislature in terms of helping to spearhead bills that will, assist seniors. So, congratulations to Jason Frank.
Yes.
My district.
We can.
Served all districts.
There you go. Any other questions or comments? Do you have something?
Yeah, I'll just bring this
Okay,
up.
Councilman Marks?
So to Ms. Rogers, I guess, or Mr. Gaskin. So this is nothing new. We contract out for a lot of legal help these days, it seems, right? We have the HRLUPA issues. We have labor issues. I think we're contracting out. Now we're contracting here. I mean, is this just basically the reality of life now, that we have such a workload that we have to engage third parties to help us?
I think it depends on the specialty area. Some of the contracting out was prior to our tenure, but I can speak firsthand on this particular endeavor because we did discuss this. Mike and I discussed it as to what would be the best direction, and the initial proposal was brought to me was just continuing to have an arrangement, which was pretty much like a quasi-contract, and just picking someone. And I didn't think that was the appropriate way to go. I believe that we should competitively offer certain services, but to the full scope of what gets contracted out and what doesn't. I think it has to do with the specialty area at hand and whether or not we feel we have the legal expertise within the organization at the time. But I think that's an area as we do our reviews of each of the installations within the government. Elizabeth Sachs Group, GRSI, is looking at all of the operational areas to see what's the current state of affairs. They are engaged actually with the law office now.
This statistic is just mind-blowing, and it's come up as we've discussed the growing senior population in this county.
Correct.
The fact that there are more senior citizens in this county than school-aged children.
There are.
25% of our population next year. That's an amazing statistic. So I echo Councilman Catch's concerns. I think we're just going to need to beef up our resources, even in the legal area as well.
Across the board,
Sure.
Holistically, this is something, again, as part of the strategic plan, looking at what our service needs are, particularly for seniors as we go forward. Because in the next 5 to 10 years, that number is going to increase. All of the boomers are now over the age of 50 and moving towards 60. So, it is a reality that we have to look not just at legal services, all kinds of services associated with seniors, and how we adjust our service delivery model to do so.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All righty. Why don't then we do page 9, fiscal matter 2. And that's Mr. Gaskins, page 9, fiscal matter 2.
Yes, Mr. Chair, with your permission and the permission of the council, I would think it might be beneficial if we call up Ms. Viola Vetter.
I was wondering what's going on there.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Good to see you. Good afternoon.
To the punch.
And appreciate your time. Go on. The floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Viola Vetter. I'm an attorney with the law firm Grant & Eisenhofer, and I am here in support of the administration's request for approval of a contract by the council with 3 private law firms to...
And by the way, just to be clear, Ms. Viola Vetter is not related to Mr. Drew Vetter, who is the deputy council.
Maybe someplace down the line somewhere.
At least not today, no.
Not as far as I know,
Right.
at least.
Well, we'll do 23andMe. God, I'm sorry. Just
But
playing.
I'll-
You.
The
Sorry.
county-
Julian started this.
The administration requests council approval to hire the legal services of 3 law firms, Barron and Budd PC, Grant and Eisenhofer, and Gordon, Wolf, and Carney. The county intends to file an action in the United States District Court for the District of Maryland against Monsanto Company and 2 corporate affiliates, Solutia Inc. and Pharmacia LLC, to pursue damages and other relief related to contamination of Baltimore County's environment and water systems with polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs. The action would be similar to the action filed in Baltimore City and abroad in other areas of the country. PCBs are a class of toxic, extremely persistent chemicals, volatile chemicals, and Ms. Vetter, she has far more experience and will detail that a little more than I can. According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, exposure to PCBs is known to cause a variety of health problems, including cancer, immune system suppression, decreased birth weight, shortened gestational age, neurological problems, skin and eye conditions, elevated blood pressure, and a host of other ailments. According to the Maryland Department of the Environment, multiple water bodies in Baltimore County are known to be impaired by PCBs, including Bird River, Gunpowder River, Seneca Creek, Middle River, Back River, Baltimore Harbor, Bear Creek, Stansbury Pond, Winds Falls, Jones Falls, and Lake Roland. MDE has identified PCBs in the discharges from storm drains owned by Baltimore County. As required by the Federal Clean Water Act, MDE has set PCB pollution reduction requirements on Baltimore County. via total maximum daily loads, or TMDLs. The costs of the PCB reduction requirements are currently unknown, but are likely to become a sizable financial liability for Baltimore County. Similar PCB reduction requirements exist for Back River wastewater treatment plant. The plant is operated by the City of Baltimore, but the county and its residents are approximately half of its customers. The county contends that the Monsanto Company was responsible for over 99% of the production, the Monsanto Company, it is believed, is responsible for a great number of the production of PCBs in the United States. The Barrow and Bud, Grant and Eisenhofer, and Towson-based Gordon, Wolf, and Carney firms have joined together to represent the City of Baltimore in a lawsuit to recover PCB-related damages from Monsanto. The law firms employ PCB remediation experts to work with their clients to develop PCB cost analyses and quantify past and future damages. The contract that the county administration seeks to enter into is typical of those involving this kind of litigation. The law firms, aforementioned law firms, are fronting all of the litigation costs and working on contingency. They will be paid only if the county, only if the plaintiffs are awarded damages, only if the county wins. We have learned that Barron and Bud actually pioneered this type of litigation, and it makes sense to retain this firm, and we seek retention of this firm pursuant to Section 902F of the county charter, specialization. And Ms. Better can further elaborate.
And Mr. Gaskins, I was just reading in the notes that the non-competitive 902F award, you believe is secured in the best interest of the county because these attorneys are also representing Baltimore City in a similar lawsuit filed in February of 2019, and that using the same firms will stress to the court the regional nature of the problem. Is that why we're doing the non-competitive route this time?
Yes.
And you call it specialization?
Specialization, yes.
I know we have a speaker here, but any questions from the council for this, Councilman Koch?
Noticed that the bodies of water in Baltimore County, Lake Roland, I know, do we still stock Lake Roland, and does people still fish there? I mean, do we know the levels of the PCP? I mean, is it safe?
So, the very heart of the lawsuit we're proposing is about environmental contamination with PCBs caused by Monsanto. Mr. Gaskins has taken a little bit of the wind out of my sails, but as you pointed out, there are a number of water bodies in the county that are impaired by PCBs and have wildlife that's impaired by PCBs, and that's really the target of this lawsuit. The exact levels right now elude me. We have some members of environmental protection sustainability here.
To answer your question specifically about Lake Roland, we're in the process of working with Maryland Department on fish advisory posters to place on many tidal areas for fish consumption to tell people how much of certain kinds of fish, what they're contaminated with, and how many you should eat. The only non-tidal area we're actually going to post it in that Lake Roland. We don't stock Lake Roland. I don't believe the state stocks Lake Roland, but many people do fish there. So we feel it's very important that they know the levels of contaminants in the fish that they're catching, and advisories about how many they should eat of those species.
So, okay, so,
So there will be a post
right,
with detail all that.
in a year, I assume, or?
Less than.
No, I mean that you can eat so much of whatever fish, okay. And the other streams, rivers that were named, do people fish in them also?
People fish in every river.
So, I'm sure there's a level that is toxic.
Yes.
And is the...
We're posting them in public parks.
Oh, okay. Good. What about the 3 reservoirs? Is this making its way into the reservoirs, these rivers?
The PCBs?
Yes.
They're below regulation.
Okay. So, and you're sure of that? Where was this plant that released this contaminant? Okay.
Yeah,
I'll listen.
if I can speak to this, because this litigation is a little bit different from what I guess people are normally used to in environmental litigation against direct releasers, some sort of chemical manufacturer that dumps directly into the river. What the county would be doing with this lawsuit is joining essentially what's become a nationwide effort to hold accountable the manufacturer of this particular toxic chemical, Monsanto. So a number of states have sued, a host of municipalities, including Baltimore City. And the theory of the case really is Monsanto, for about 4 decades, was basically the sole domestic manufacturer of this chemical, PCBs, which have a number of characteristics that make them a very potent threat to the environment, which Monsanto knew about and which it did nothing about. So PCBs are toxic. We touched on that. They're persistent. So once they're released into the environment, they don't go away on their own. You need some sort of remedial action. They bioaccumulate, so they get taken up in fatty tissue, first of very small organisms, then by fish, and then eventually by humans, to the extent you eat fish. That's the route they take. And they escape. They have the tendency to escape from the applications. So whatever use they're put to, they can escape that application. And there's a host of applications. So it's this non-flammable chemical that was used a lot as a dielectric fluid in like transistors and so forth, but also then open up to a number of more household uses. So it's in paints and caulks and lubricants and sealants and so forth. And it basically can leach and leak out of there into the environment. And Monsanto knew all this. So they, over years, had developed that information about toxicity and persistence and so forth, but also about this volatility within products. In fact, we are counsel in a number of these litigations, and together with Barron & Budd, a host of litigations. The types of documents we've seen, a number of them have trickled out into the public domain, show that Monsanto acknowledged that basically through abrasion and leaching, eventually all these chemicals will end up in the environment. So these sorts of lawsuits are aimed at holding the ultimate responsible party responsible, the manufacturer of these chemicals responsible, because they had developed this intricate knowledge and failed to reformulate, failed to warn the end users about proper disposal and so forth, failed to come up with an alternative and so forth, and in fact actually ratcheted up production once this had already become fairly clear the sort of environmental hazard these chemicals posed. Ratcheted up production, and I quote again from one of their internal documents, because they couldn't afford to lose $1 of business. So that's the litigation we're talking about under a number of common law theories, hold accountable the manufacturer, not so much anyone in the downstream plant that may have used this as an industrial chemical.
So it was not manufactured in Maryland, is what you're telling me, or in the Baltimore metropolitan area?
I think Monsanto's major plants were out of state, yes.
Okay. So does Monsanto still use PCB in their products?
They were actually banned in the late 70s. But so for 4 decades prior to that, the 30s through the 70s, Monsanto was the predominant manufacturer. And given their persistence, they're still around. So they have, in fact, been outlawed with some exceptions. By and large outlawed, but they're still around. So you look at the water reports that are submitted under federal guidelines, and you will find in every state, in the waterways, in the sediment, in the soil, there are still PCBs, and they cycle through they continue to cycle through the environment. So they get taken up in the atmosphere, they rain back down, they are flushed out through stormwater and so forth. So they are this legacy and continuing problem. And the lawsuits that are being filed right now and that we propose for the county seek to remediate ultimately, hold Monsanto accountable, and get the funds that municipalities need to attack this problem.
The contamination then is increasing, decreasing, or what?
So it stays at a steady clip, I would say, because I mean they're persistent unless they're somehow remediated, which in some localized fashion, you know, they are or they have been in a number of locations, but they continue to cycle through the environment.
What's the remedy then if whatever product you use leaches this chemical? I mean, what is there a procedure you should use and was that well known to the public since 1970?
There are a number of remedial steps that can be taken, but they are costly. And right now, it's the states or municipal governments that bear that burden. And so, you know, and you need to look at, in the particular locality, what would make the most sense. But for example, Baltimore County runs the local municipal separate storm sewer system, so they're in charge of handling that MS4 and kind of in charge of reducing PCBs being reintroduced into the surface water. So there's a number of steps that could be taken. For example, you could try to trap PCBs in the pavement through introducing pervious pavements. You can trap them there so they don't get washed back out through the stormwater. If there's a particular hotspot you know about, you can use something called suction dredging to prevent PCBs from being resuspended into the environment. You may have to replace certain piping in the sewer system and so forth. So there are a number of steps that can be taken, but all of them come with a hefty price tag. So there are limits, I would say, to municipalities' ability to take those
With the
steps.
documentation that you've received from Monsanto, how long have they known this?
For decades. I mean, they had...
Prior to 1970, they've known for decades.
Certainly about the toxicity, they knew very early on and didn't reveal. I mean, they had an entire... You know, they're scientists. They have their own scientific department assessing the chemicals that they produce. So they've developed knowledge about toxicity and bioaccumulation and persistence fairly early on. I'm sure, you know, the information built over time, but for a very long time before the public knew, Monsanto was aware of it.
Thank you.
Other questions from the council? Councilwoman Bevins?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. I don't know if this is a question for you or Mr. Likens, but this is very disturbing to me, and I represent the families that live on the Bird River, the Gunpowder, and the Middle River, and I live on the Gunpowder River. I swim in this water. My grandchildren swim in this water. I recently had a pet die that swam in this water every day. So I find it very disturbing that I know that on the website you would say when, the county would say when it's healthy and not healthy to swim in the water, right? Usually after a storm they would say stay out of the water. But no one's never told me to keep my family out of the water because of this chemical, ever. So are you even making the suggestion, and Back River is not in my district, but it flows into Councilman Crandall's district, saying that those waters are actually unsafe to eat the fish, the crabs, and to swim in?
That's what it says.
Well, I don't ever think I've been notified, and I'm not going to speak for you, Councilman Crandall, but I've never been notified to notify my constituency about not consuming fish or crabs from the waterways that we represent and live on, ever.
Well, and if I may, Mr. Leggins, I think that's a great idea, and for my colleagues that are interested, I already sent a couple links over to Councilman Catch. If you're an avid fisherman on the Chesapeake Bay, you're aware of the fish consumption advisory website, and there are things that you can download. It's actually it's a pretty substantial website, and I'm happy to share that with you all. And the gentleman sitting next to Mr. Likens, that's your prompt to tell us your name. Robert Hirsch. Okay. So to follow on what he was saying is that you can go and look either specifically by waterway or by species, and the chart will tell you we advise only 3 meals with this particular species out of this waterway per month. And then you'll also see in their charts it'll say avoid the species altogether, and then there's some other classifications in there, but it's actually very thorough. Now, as far as notifying the general public, and if you're not an avid fisherman or you don't care and you're just pulling stuff out and taking it home and eating it, I think that might be part of the message, David, is that not just posters at boat ramps and such, but maybe a bit of a public relations campaign through the county's social media, because we have recreational fishermen, they might not be so avid, they just don't know.
And I'd like to add, a lot of those, whether they're commercial or non-commercial, they catch rockfish, crabs, whatever, they sell it to the local restaurants on the east side. So people are consuming that not even knowing. Can I ask you why we're still on this? What about dredging? Mr. Likens, when you disturb the water, does that bring it back to life and get it going again? Or? Have you done that on the Berg River yet, since you're going to be dredging there soon? You've already done it? And? It's okay. Thank you.
And real quickly, I know a bunch of people here for the live music bill, and that is on the docket. It's 2 more bills, but we'll be there soon, I think. But I mean, this is a serious thing. I mean, this is definitely very serious. And I know Ms. Rogers, I think you had something, then Councilman Jones and Councilman Marks.
Sure. Good afternoon, council members. This is why we are pursuing the litigation with Baltimore City, because we want to be in line should there be an award, a legal award, so that we will be positioned to receive some of the resources to mitigate the issue, because as Mr. Likens indicated, it's very costly to do the kinds of things that you would have to do to the system. It's not something that individual consumers can do. Councilmember Cash. But that, if you've watched this play out over the country, you know, the other litigation and the awards that have been given, you know, if we go back to the tobacco industry, the awards that have been given and how monies are used to mitigate certain things, that's why we are seeking to be in alignment with the lawsuit. And because we share the water system, being in, you know, the litigation with Baltimore City will enable us to, if there is an award that comes out of this, to have resources to do our share here in the county, same as the city would do. We definitely hear you with respect to more consumer awareness around the fish and the species, to communicate more than just to the fisherman community. So we're happy to take this back to the public health side as well, because that's where we can look at it. But funding to do more things about that too would be something that we can use, because it's going to be a long-term kind of cleanup. So we're looking at what is happening across the country.
But also, does the county have any legal exposure here, whether it's for the water itself, drinking, fishing? Do we have exposure as a county?
It's not my understanding that we have legal exposure. I mean, that's not the vein that we went down looking at this. It's about what is the reason that this contaminant is in the water. Now, I don't know if our
And I would say, it sounds to me that this county, much like other municipalities, is taking steps. There is a monitoring of PCBs. They're working on a plan for PCB reduction. Is taking steps within its power, within its budget. But we should really look to the ultimate responsible party here, which is Monsanto, who introduced this chemical into the environment knowingly and for decades. And that's the crux of the litigation here and elsewhere, including in Baltimore City.
And the more we're learning about it, the more we're trying to proactively do. But the big step is to be a part of the litigation. So if there is an award, we would receive some of those resources to proactively do what we need to do. But we'll take that back to the legal team, but I have not heard anything about that particular aspect of liability on the county.
I wouldn't mind Mr. Michael Fields reviewing it and just maybe sending something in writing to the council just so we understand it.
That's fine. We're happy to do that.
Councilman Jones?
No, I just wanted to, I guess when I think about the fact that we're here in 2019 talking about a chemical that was introduced into the environment and used and was banned like 50 years ago, it's a reminder to all of us that, you know, we only have one earth, and we have to really, really be careful when we allow things to get into the environment that is still hanging around 50 years later, and we just talking about litigation. So as a firefighter, I know early on that we realized that when I first got in the fire department over 30 years ago, we used to burn the stuff for training because we got it for free from BGE. And there was a number of firefighters that came down with cancer that went back to those PCBs. So it's amazing to me that, you know, we're here in 2019, still talking about it.
Councilman Marks?
Yeah, thinking back to our conversations this summer with regard to the Mountain Christian Church, and we explored how these waterways cross jurisdiction lines. I know Baltimore City initiated its lawsuit in February. Do you know if there's any discussion about Hartford or Carroll or Anne Arundel County also being part of this?
I'm not currently aware of those discussions. I would think it would certainly be useful if they were sparked, but sitting here right now, I am not aware.
We're not joining. It's
Oh, I'm
totally-
sorry.
It's distinctive.
There has been a
It's distinctive from
misunderstanding on
Baltimore
it. This
City.
would be an entirely separate lawsuit, but
Correct.
about the
But
same
in the
subject
pool.
matter. But, would be important, since I think we had touched on it. I mean, natural resources, they don't really stop at
No.
the city line.
Correct.
Or the county line. So both of these municipalities, quote-unquote, joining forces, not as part of a consolidated lawsuit, but pursuing the same lawsuit under the same legal strategy for the same result, will be useful. But yes, it would be an entirely separate litigation on behalf of Baltimore County.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Katz.
Yes, in the interest of openness and transparency, I suggest that the administration and the council post the chart that Councilman Crandall sent me, which has a list of all the streams, rivers, and the recommendation, don't eat fish from this one, 3 a month from that one. I think this is something that needs to be done. And also, following along with the chairman's question about any liability the county may have, are the recommendation, let's say, for Lake Roland, that 3 meals a month for adult, 3 meals a month for child, or whatever it is on the fish, with the fish, is that, can we stand by that? I mean, people are different weights, they're different, I'm sorry. From the state of Maryland. So, I think if I saw it, I'm not sure I would be eating 3 meals of fish from Loch Raven from Lake Roland in a month, but, okay. And then you heard Councilman Bevins had a dog who used to swim in that water.
Well, anybody else? I know we've got 2 more items on the agenda. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this one? All righty. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. So live music will be coming up soon. We got one more bill in between. If the council could turn to page 8, Bill 45-19, Councilwoman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill 4519 would amend the zoning regulations for the uses permitted in a business major commercial town center core, which is known as a BMCT zone. In addition to the business and retail uses permitted in the BM zone, in order to also permit a mixed uses to aid in the redevelopment and the commercial corridor along Eastern Boulevard and Maryland 43. The bill would permit the manufacturing uses permitted in the manufacturing light ML zone, but only if the property is zoned BMCT and located in the Middle River Employment Center area. And what all that means, we'll boil it down. This is referring again to the depot property, the 60-acre depot property on Eastern Avenue at Route 43. I'm going to start calling it the Aviation Station now that it's been finally sold and we have new owners. This property originally had manufacturing on it, and back in 2012, I changed the zoning to allow for a mixed use, more of a retail and restaurant venue. That developer was never able to partner with anybody and do what the vision was for that property. Now that it has been resold, we have several businesses like Copper Mine who will be coming to the depot, a brewing company, a hotel, and it's very important that this zoning go on here for later on. One, for the maker spaces that we want to make available for small businesses that really can't afford a brick and mortar type, 1,000 square foot venue to make their product. They share space now. They do it a lot in the city and on other jurisdictions where the space is smaller. They can go in 24 hours a day and work on this. Also for artists to have space, to share these spaces, and whether you sculpt or paint or do pottery, this would allow you to do that as well. We're moving towards a TOD for this property, and in order to do that, we have to have the Mark Station at the location of Eastern Avenue moved over to this area, so it would be a destination for people to get off the train and then patronize something on this 60 acres. So this property has had a lot of legislation and zoning applied to it to finally bring it to fruition. And I'm really excited now about the new owners and the jobs that are going to come to the area, and that Copper Mine is coming, which will allow minor leagues to come, and all this is going to help all the other businesses in the Middle River and 43 area. So I'm really excited about the introduction of 4519, and I hope my colleagues will support me on this effort.
Councilwoman, I know that you've worked extremely hard over the years on this project, and you've had some fits and starts with it.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
But my hope for you and for that corridor, this means this will have impact in my district.
That's what we're hoping.
And more of a regional impact, the way that Route 43 is already doing. So my hope for you and for all of us is that this works and plans are realized, and that property returns to a positive on our tax revenue base.
I appreciate that, and I really think with Trade Point Atlantic in your district and what's happening up on Crossroads at 95 and all of 43 and what's going to happen at the depot, we only have to connect what's in the middle, and of course that is Essex. So we're hoping that it will have this chain reaction. So they are my hopes as well.
Great. Any other questions or comments for Councilwoman Bevins?
Thank you.
Councilman Marks?
Just to echo the comments, for the better part of a decade, I took the MARC train out of Martin State Airport to Washington, D.C., and that has the potential to be such an amazing transitory development hub for the region. This is not just a Middle River bill. It's something that's going to have repercussions across eastern Baltimore County and into Hartford County. So,
Great. Thank you. And this is supported by the Essex Middle River Civic Council, which represents 23 communities. So we do have the community support on this change as well.
Thank you. Everybody good? Okay, super briefly before we get to live music, because I know we have a fair amount of speakers, our council secretary, Mr. Boswick, just notified me that Eric Hadaway is here, and he's up for appointment for the Baltimore County Soil Conservation District Board. And it's nice to see you, Mr. Hadaway. Does any of the members have any quick questions for Mr. Hadaway? Is everybody good on that appointment? I think that's an easy one. So thank you for your service, but I just want to acknowledge you and really appreciate your service to the county. Everybody good before we go to live music? All right. Let's go to live music. All right, so Bill 44-19, live musical entertainment for the purpose of permitting live musical entertainment in certain areas, providing a process for obtaining a use permit for live musical entertainment, providing a process for the suspension or revocation of the use permit, renewal of a use permit, appeals, and generally relating to live music. And I think I'll start this off just by asking Mr. Bostwick if he could explain to us what the current zoning is in relation to live music in Baltimore County, for the record. Mr. Bostwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Live music in the county it's an interesting conundrum because as we all know, the Baltimore County Code tells us what we can and can't do. But mostly it's written in the prohibitive, meaning unless the county code says you can't do something, then most likely you can. For instance, there's a statute in the county code that says you can't loiter in front of a business under certain circumstances. So if we didn't have a law like that, presumably then you could. as you all know from the fact that you have constituents and people come before you from time to time, the zoning regulations are different. The zoning regulations are such that if something isn't in the zoning regulations that says you can do something, for instance, a certain use in a certain zone, then you can't do it. The zoning regulations are, I guess, what we would call exclusive, not inclusive. Again, that's why you have people that come before you now and then and say, hey, the zoning regulations are silent as to this, so we need a bill so that we can do X or Y. And because of that, live music is one of those uses that is really not addressed in the zoning regulations, but for a very brief area. And that area is nightclubs. The zoning regulations define a nightclub, and included in that definition is the providing of live or recorded entertainment. It's the only area really that allows music in that sense. And the only place you can have a nightclub is in the BM zone or in the BR zone, and that is because the BR zone also has as permitted uses that are permitted as right in the BM zone. So we're talking two zones, BM and BR, that allow nightclubs. Tavern is also a use that is defined in the regulations. Restaurants are defined, but none of those definitions call for the providing of live or recorded entertainment. And so the conundrum is, well, wait a minute, we have businesses all over Baltimore County that are not zoned BM or BR, and they're probably not really nightclubs either, as we would think that term is utilized. And yet they have people playing acoustic guitars with a guy with a cymbal, playing a cymbal with his foot, all the way to like live bands. And so where does live music fall in the county? And the answer is there's not a perfect uniform regulation that deals with it. But the fact is I believe it's more of a reactionary type of situation. In other words, I don't think that it's something that is that worrisome unless it becomes so because of complaints or what have you. I think it's a complaint-driven thing, but for a few exceptions. And one of the most, I guess, well-known cases in the area of this, well-known maybe not to the populace, but to people, I guess, on the inside, so to speak, is the Dock of the Bay. The Dock of the Bay is on Miller's Island. Mrs. Bevins and Mr. Crandall are probably well familiar with it due to their locations. The Dock of the Bay is zoned BL. There's a restaurant very, very similar to the Dock of the Bay known as Rowboat Willie's that is zoned BM. So they're probably very similar operations, but one can play live music and the other can't. So why is that? Because about 12 years ago in 2007, the owner of the Dock of the Bay, because of complaints, I believe, from neighbors, had a determination made by the zoning commissioner of whether he could have live music or not. And the zoning commissioner at that time, Bill Wiseman, went through a very exhaustive analysis of the regulations, those definitional terms, and the building code and what did and did not constitute a nightclub. And he found that, and Mr. Tanner, the owner of Dock of the Bay, was saying, look, I'm just playing a little bit of music here and there. I'm not a nightclub in the sense that most people would think. But unfortunately, it kind of was, for lack of a better way to say it, it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and what's the other? Walks like a duck. It's a duck. And so he found that, Mr. Wiseman found that it was a nightclub, and being in the BL zone, you couldn't do it. So, and that case has been on appeal a number of times and has always been upheld. So the reason I bring that up is because, well, where does that leave us then? And what about those people in restaurants that are playing minor or benign live music for their customers, or a music store that wants to have like a live music jam or something like that. What do they do? And the answer is, I guess they do whatever they want because the regulations really don't address that. And does PAI try to manage it somehow by allowing it to some degree but without any real guidance? I'm sure, because we're not trying to prevent people from doing those kinds of things. But that's where we are right now, and I guess that segues to the reason for Bill 4419, is at least as it pertains to the arts and entertainment district designation that it's trying to achieve, and the live music that is sought after in District 1. This bill is born.
And just for the record, I think we're really fortunate as a county council because Mr. Bostwick also was deputy zoning commissioner at one point, and I do see my friend Jack Murphy in the audience, zoning commissioner. So there's people that really understand the zoning and the code. It's these two guys, and we as a council actually listen to these guys a lot because they really understand the code, and the code is anything but simple and is exceptionally complex. So some people, I think this bill suddenly is taking away a right. It's actually adding a right. It's making live music by right, by definition, in the zoning that we're asking for. And the genesis of this bill just wasn't like made up. You know, I'm not, like as some people said on Facebook, I'm not just sitting around and wasting time and like looking for things to do. And no, the genesis of this bill came from the community. Let me say that again, because I don't think everybody understands this. Where this bill came from is the business community in Catonsville and Arbutus. I had business owners that want to have live music. They're coming to me saying, Tom, I want live music, but my attorneys are saying I can't have live music. I'm a business. I want to play by the rules. I just want clarity and certainty so I can have live music and not have to worry about upsetting maybe another business owner, upsetting maybe a community member. So, again, the genesis came from the community. And not only did it come from the community, I have tons of letters and tons of support from the business community in Catonsville and in Arbutus. These are not Democrats. These are not Republicans. Live music is bipartisan. I'm not trying to tax you guys and raise revenues. That's like silly nonsense. Bottom line is, if anybody wants them, like here's one from 818 Gourmet Market in Catonsville. They're investing $8.6 million on Main Street right now. They strongly support this. They want to have live music. They just want to know what the rules are. They want to have more live music, not less. The Greater Catonsville Chamber of Commerce, a very pro-business, tons of Republicans, tons of Democrats, tons of independents. They love this bill. They said this about time, and maybe we can have it in the future, maybe countywide if other council members want to look at it countywide, which I certainly wouldn't mind doing. I think the reason why we're sitting on Catonsville and Arbutus right now is to make sure it works. And if it works well, then maybe we can expand it, we can learn from it. If it doesn't work well, then sure, I'm open to amendments, I'm open to fixing it, modifying it, killing it, because I want to make sure it works and actually promotes live music. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this bill, and again, it's coming directly from the businesses that want to have more local live music, not less, more. I would just want to emphasize that, more live music, because I think the problem with social media is you get a couple people or a couple bloggers or a couple partisan nutballs, and they put out a bunch of stuff that's completely the opposite of what this bill is doing. So I want to make it clear, because we have public speakers, I want to make it clear the user permit is free. There's no cost. We're not trying to raise taxes or revenues. We've stripped down a lot of the process because we don't want to make this hard. We don't want to make this difficult for people. We want to make this user permit super easy, super simple. We're not trying to put an extra burden on business. We're trying to lift one off of them so they can bring in live music and we can promote live music. Now, Mr. Patoka might like this one because this comes right out of Planning Magazine. And Mr. Patoka, Councilman Patoka and Peter Gutwald will like Planning Magazine because Planning Magazine did a really good article in February of 2019. And it's titled, Planning for Music Can Help Transform American Cities and Towns and Small Businesses and Townships. And one of the strategies is strategy number 1, ready for this one, write music-friendly policies, strategy number 1. And so what Bill 44-19 does, very specifically by right, it allows businesses to have live music and not have to worry about being at risk by not being permitted to. And as Mr. Bostwick said with our zoning laws, the zoning laws, we have to specify what is permitted. It's not like if it's not specified, it's just permitted. It's not. It's just not how zoning laws work, unfortunately. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is in Catonsville and Arbutus, part of this area, and hopefully eventually all of it, will be part of the, I see Baltimore County Arts Guild here, because this is part of the A&E district. We want to have this as an A&E district as well, so we're really trying to bring in more local musicians. We're really trying to bring in more live music. I strongly believe that we can do that. You know, Baltimore County is going to continue to grow and prosper. And then, of course, with our Department of Tourism, I would love to see one day where our tourism says, hey, we got live music in this place and that place. You know, hey, why don't you go check it out? And guess what? That helps small business. That helps our local economy. It helps Baltimore County. So, yeah, I've been doing this 9 years, and I can candidly and truthfully say I've never seen more misinformation and complete opposite understanding what the bill is about. So saying that, I'll open up for questions. Councilman Koch.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to thank the council staff. I had requested that the bill be drafted or be reprinted with the amendments, which is up here, which I really appreciate. When I look at this, I'm trying to figure out, this bill strictly applies to Catonsville, Arbutus. None of the provisions of this bill apply to anywhere else. Is that true?
That is correct, Mr. Couch.
Correct. Okay.
And Councilman Koch, I really appreciate you asking that question, because this is strictly about Catonsville and Arbutus.
Right.
And you know, maybe later we could, if this works, maybe we can expand it countywide. But we're intentionally designed it so it doesn't address anything else, just Catonsville and Arbutus.
About 6 months ago, you all voted for legislation that I put in to allow for a concert venue on Cockeysville Road in Cockeysville. And one of the things we did is I worked with the community, and the distance that this venue could be from the neighbors was 1,500 feet. And it also referred to the state law that limits the number of decibels that would be heard in the neighborhoods. It's 55 decibels after 11, I think, and 65 before 11. I believe that is the state law, but I think in the bill that I put in, it's 55, and everything is okay. You know, I've heard no complaints. And so I assume that Catonsville and Arbutus, that the communities are going to work on regulations that'll say they can't do this within a certain distance of a neighborhood or a neighboring house. And obviously the noise levels can't be more than 55 decibels, I presume. You know, what I tell the neighbors to do if they have a problem, record it. And they've actually recorded noise levels in another case, the animal shelter, noise levels above 55. So, you know, there are protections out there for citizens. And my question, Councilman, when do you, who will be putting together the regulations for Catonsville and Arbutus, and about how long do you think it'll take?
It's a great question, Councilman Koch, and we intentionally stripped out a lot of the what might be seen as onerous type of process, because we did get legitimate feedback. When I put the bill in, I was absolutely certain no matter what I put in, it was going to be completely changed before we even got it this far, because I knew it would create a lot of interest. And so we took a lot of what I would say are the legitimate concerns and tried to address them by taking out some of the process, because I think people thought maybe it would be too much of a burden, might backfire, which I saw their point for sure. currently, we're letting it up to the Director of Permits, Approvals, and Inspections to look at this. And I'm hoping, actually, what I'm hoping, and I know the Director, I think he's a very reasonable and fair person and really likes live music and bicycling and other things. I'm hoping that it can almost be really easy and really look at things, on a case-by-case basis. Like if it's a local business that wants to bring live music and it's not surrounded by any homes, maybe there's a little more flexibility there. But if it's a local business and maybe the next door is an office or next door is a home, maybe there'll be a little more tighter controls. But I think what happens in reality is this bill really is not for 95% of businesses, because 95% of businesses are self-policing. Why? Because their customers are their neighbors. And so most good businesses reach out to their neighbors and they want to work with the concerns, and they do a wonderful job. The user permit is really only designed to go after the bad apples that would ruin the potential for live music for everybody. Because invariably, I see my friend Jack Milani out there, 98% of businesses are going to self-police, and they probably don't even need this because they'll do the right job. This is mostly the stick in case we have a bad apple that we need to weed out, which I can tell you from being in government for 9 years, unfortunately, once in a while we'll have somebody that abuses this live music by right, and we have to have some control so the community doesn't come up and say, this isn't working, just get the whole thing out of here. So that's the only intention. It's definitely not a government regulation thing. It's more about making sure we have some process, including due process if we need to, just to make sure live music can flourish and do well, and we can go after the few bad apples that could ruin this whole thing.
I have a question for Mr. Bostwick. The Hunt Valley Town Center on Fridays during the summer has a concert series, and I've had some local bar restaurants. They don't have much business on Friday night because people are up at the concert. How would a restaurant bar along York Road, let's say near Hunt Valley, get the ability to have live music?
Well, that goes back to that sort of conundrum that I addressed earlier.
Right.
The type to move away just slightly from that, the feet on the street type things, the things that you see during the summer on a Friday night here in Towson, in Catonsville, I think Pikesville, Reisterstown, I'm sorry, other areas have them, and I don't believe that they are affected by this bill because they are a different category. They're not. For one thing, they're not businesses or commercial venues, and two, they are gatherings that are taken care of by another type of permit, which is a gathering permit. And when they have those events, and the reason I know this is because I spoke to an authority, Nancy Hafford, because Ms. Hafford runs the Towson Chamber of Commerce, and she is at the forefront of the feet on the street for Towson. And she gets a gathering permit, and in the gathering permit, she spells out what the activities are that they are providing, one of which is live entertainment, bands, and as well as moon bounces, as well as food and drink vendors. And some of those particular activities have their own additional permits that they have to go through getting. So the music in that venue, under those circumstances, is covered, I believe, under that gathering permit, or at least as part of it. To go back to what you were saying, again, I think the conundrum is the regulations are fairly incomplete. I don't know what the right word is with regard to live music in Baltimore County. So I suspect that those venues will continue to operate as they are or as they have been, and I don't know what to say other than it's a wait and see to see what happens next.
So if one of the restaurant bars who also has outside, tents, whatever, wants to have live entertainment, would they come to me and then we send them to a particular county agency for them to go through whatever process
if they are a nightclub in a BR or BM, there's no problem.
Now, if
But-
they're not I don't know what they are, but let's say
if they
they're
are
not.
if they are not, then they are doing it in a manner that PAI, I believe, would say is okay, within reason. If they've been doing it for a long time and there haven't been any problems and there's no trouble, then I think they would be okay to continue what they're doing.
They don't do it. They've never done it, but they'd like to do it.
Well, I don't know, Mr. Catch. That's the whole conundrum that we've been talking about, and that
Right.
at least this bill, I believe, in speaking with Mr. Quirk, is intended to address in the Catonsville and Arbutus areas that also have that CCC zoning overlay.
And I think the reason why we're doing that is we just want to make sure it works.
Right.
If it doesn't work, then we'll change it, fix it, kill it, modify it. If it does work, maybe we can use it for other parts of the county, because Councilman Catch, I mean, he's exactly right, because what happened with this bill is here's a business that wants to invest $9 million, is investing $9 million in Catonsville, and he wants to do live music. And he says, I can't do live music because my attorney said I don't have the zoning, and I don't want to get in trouble. Yeah, I want to play by the rules. I just want to have certainty and clarity. And then so I had a committee. I formed a committee. I mean, Eric Lamb and David Whitaker, Laura Bacon, a whole bunch of people joined up this committee, and they actually went out and talked to all the business owners. Hey, are you supportive? Are you against this? And I don't know one business owner in Arbutus or Catonsville that are against this at all. If they exist, I'm not aware of them. I don't know many residents or locals that live in Catonsville or Arbutus that are against this. Actually, I just know one. The concern I actually get is usually from people that don't live inside of Arbutus and Catonsville. And so to me, if this works, let's copy and let's do it other places too, but let's make sure it works first.
Right.
Because, I mean, I think live music, I would say, can't speak for all my council members, but I would guess that everybody up here wants live music, wants restaurants to do well, wants bars, wants taverns, wants local business, small business. I would guess invariably all of us would say, absolutely, we want this. We just want to make sure it's a process that can work well and give businesses clarity and certainty, because if I know one thing about capital, and I know one thing about investment, and I know a little bit about it, businesses want clarity, businesses want certainty, businesses want to know what the rules are. And when I have a business owner coming to me telling me they can't do something because their attorney said you can't do it, well, that's a problem. And so I just want to allow live music. I don't want to kill off live music. I don't want to hurt local musicians. I want the opposite. I want to make sure this works and works well. So I appreciate the question. Councilman Patoka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, you are correct. Planners do love live music.
Good article.
Yes.
I brought it just for you, Councilman Patoka.
Thank you. And planners believe that live music can be a revitalization tool. Just ask Austin, Texas. In fact, in Austin, the Austin government funds in their budget a radio station that plays live music, and they only play local acts. And that's why so many bands you hear, well, where are you out of? And they say, well, I'm out of Austin, Texas. And they go to Austin because they can get airtime on a radio. So I think it's something, Kimmy Rouston, that we should consider as making Baltimore County a destination point for live musicians throughout the country, in addition to the great musicians that are homegrown Baltimore County musicians. And I want to just thank you, Mr. Chair. The first draft of the bill was a little confusing, and we got lots of calls because we have a fantastic event in Reisterstown, up to 15, 16 events per year, music on Main Street. Even goes into the winter where it's not on it's on Main Street, but it's taken indoors at Trinity Church. We have Twilight Thursday in the district. We're hopeful at some point to have live music at the Pikesville Armory. And so I think taking out some of the language made it more clear. We heard from not only the organizers of these musical events, but we also heard from musicians, and we heard from some really good musicians too, that they were a little unclear. And so I think that both of these stakeholders that are integral components to making Baltimore County the live music capital of Maryland is a step in the right direction.
Thank you. other questions or comments? Councilwoman Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilman Quirk, I really want to thank you for all the time and consideration that you put into this bill. And yes, the phones were ringing off the hook this week because a lot of people didn't understand the bill or the consequences of the bill. And so I'm very grateful. I have the Avenue at White Marsh that does a concert series all spring and summer long where people come from all over for that. Parkville Business Association has always done a concert series in the spring and summer, which is overseen by their business association. And I'm guessing most of the people that I heard from were very nervous about this because they're not actually zoned for live music. Most of the, I won't mention any of them, are not supposed to have live music, and they do it anyway, and it's all complaint-driven. So if you're a good neighbor, nobody's usually calling the liquor board or calling code enforcement and reporting you. But you must remember that Councilman Crandall and I have a lot of restaurants/bars on the waterfront, and that's a whole different animal when you're playing music. And we went back to Dock of the Bay back in the day because they would have, 5-piece bands playing outside surrounded by community till 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, that's not being a good neighbor. Okay, so that's when you have to be careful, and most of my establishments that have music are very mindful of their communities, and they work with the communities, or they make sure the music's not playing after 10 o'clock. They don't do it during the week. So I applaud you for what you're doing in Catonsville and the Arbutus area, and I think that this may be something that we can do for the rest of Baltimore County. I'm very anxious to see how it works, and I hope a lot of people are calmed down now over the piece of legislation now that you've had time to digest it for everybody. So I think it's going to be a good thing.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bevins. And I do want to acknowledge a lot of the passionate people on social media as well, all that want to make sure live music flourishes and does well. And candidly, we got a lot of the ideas on the amendments from the public. Hey, what do you like about it? What do you don't like about it? What's legitimate issues? What aren't? But that was actually very helpful for me and my staff. And I do know we are lucky in this room today because we got Mr. Bostwick, who really understands zoning, being Deputy Zoning Commissioner, and also Jack Murphy is former Deputy Zoning Commissioner, too. So in this room, we actually have two people that are truly experts in the county on zoning. And I guess, Jack Murphy, if I could just, do you concur with what Mr. Bostwick has been saying about live music? I mean, do you agree with his statements? Thank you. I just wanted to, so that's two of the most experts in the county, both completely agreeing that we're not just looking for something to do here. Anybody else on the county? Councilman Marks?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine this, but the Feet on the Street events have been going on for 14 years in downtown Towson. And, we have such a building boom going on in Towson right now, but think back to 14 years ago when there was just vast areas of Towson that were derelict, undeveloped, and Feet on the Street was a catalyst starting first at Allegheny Avenue and then expanding outward. So, I agree with everything that's been said here. These events do bring people into a downtown area, and they can be a real catalyst for change.
And I know we have a bunch of public speakers. Anything else before I open it to public speakers? Everybody good? Everybody good? All right, Mr. Bostwick, you have the speaker list? Thank you. Thank you. All right. Our first speaker on the list is Jack Milani. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes to speak. And we do have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 13 speakers. And good afternoon, Mr. Milani. Appreciate you coming in today. And I also appreciate all your advice and input in helping on this bill, because believe me, we are definitely all interested in what your group has to say about this.
Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Chair, members of the council. First off, representing Baltimore County Licensed Beverage Association, I want to also thank Mr. Bostwick, because
we thought alcohol beverage law was complicated, and then we started looking at zoning. I don't know how you guys do it, but we threw some ideas at them because our group is very much in favor of the concept. I think the only fear they have is they're not in it. And one of the things that we were trying and to see if we could get is some type of amendment that would make it broader, and understanding that it's a difficult process because, we know in the liquor world, we have a little different check and balance than most businesses. Anytime we have a service from a police of any site, whether we call or someone calls, the police show up, they write a report. That report gets forwarded immediately to the liquor board. So if there's something we did wrong, they issue a show cause, we come in, hopefully it's just a fine. Sometimes they can take you in closure for a few days. So we do have some check and balances, and we were looking possibly at one of the amendments would have dealt with Class B and D, because I do think a large portion of the problem is the definition of nightclub is kind of odd the way they define it, because just because you have music doesn't make you a nightclub. And I think it's hard for most folks to understand what the intent is, because one of the places on Frederick Road I know that requested this does a tremendous food business, but later on they have a band that would come in. I don't think of them as a nightclub, and I think, Mr. Boswick, you and I have had this conversation. I don't know that we could really define what the intent was. But I do think in this time, in this place in the world, you want entertainment. You're vying to get people out and spend money. You're trying to keep them local. If we can keep them in the county rather than having them venture to Anne Arundel or Baltimore, it's good because the dollars stay with us. So I guess really what I would ask is that, there are many, many responsible business owners. See if we can work something out for all of them, and don't let the actions of one or two who, I know were mentioned, don't let them affect the people who do a good job. I mean, I can tell you that there are times when our association, someone will come to us has done something wrong and ask for help. And we say, look, it's too late. Go into the liquor board, tell them what you're going to do to correct it, and that way you have another chance. Because most business owners I'm aware of, if I have a problem with a neighbor, I can guarantee you I'm going to deal with it before the liquor board or the council becomes involved with it. It's just common sense. I need those folks to patronize me. So if there's a way that we could be amended onto this countywide, we'd be more than welcome, if you want to sit down, throw some more ideas out. But there are a lot of folks who are just fearful of they're not in this, they don't have that protection.
Thank you. And again, I really appreciate your advice and your help on this one. It's complicated for sure, but rest assured we'll work very closely with you and your group because we want to see all of you do really well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Next, I'd like to actually call up two people together from UMBC. If I could call Mr. Christopher Rowe and Marie Lilly to come up from UMBC. And thank you both for coming out. And I also want to acknowledge the work of the Arts Guild, Kirby Spencer, Marilyn Maitland, Tom Moore from UMBC, because this live music bill is not only just in a vacuum, it also is in correlation with what we're doing with the Arts and Entertainment District, which UMBC is a huge part of. So really appreciate all your help and your expertise as well, which I think is going to help us put this over the top. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the council. My name is Marie Lilly. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at UMBC, and we have been thrilled to partner with the Arts Guild and with the County Executive's Office and Council Chairman Quirk's office to partner on both the Arts and Entertainment District and our project in downtown Arbutus, Okamoka. I'm going to cede most of my time to our student leader / alumni here, who's been deeply involved in the project. But as many of you know, Okamoka is a new investment that the university is making on East Drive in Arbutus. It generated from a student class on entrepreneurship, going into the community and doing a wide variety of interviews about what the needs of the community were and how UMBC as an anchor institution could help more bring together our community, thinking about the idea of a college town. One of the things we heard resoundingly from community members was interest in both a retail space, Okamoka will serve as a coffee shop, and an arts and culture space that could be used for community gathering. So the OCA, the OCA, stands for Opportunities for Community Alliances, and the space will feature both the retail coffee shop, which we're hoping to have live music performances during, and a community meeting room, which community groups will be able to use for free. We'll also feature an art gallery and various other related things. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris to tell you a little bit more about his work around the music in the space.
Thanks again. My name is Christopher Roa, and I recently graduated from UMBC with a degree, an individualized study degree focusing on music technology and social entrepreneurship. And it was in the entrepreneurship program where we began working on Okamoka, which is a coffee shop and community initiative in which we're really hoping to help this small town thrive. As a UMBC student, I tried to patronize businesses and go out to Arbutus as often as I could afford, really. And I can certainly tell you the town has a lot of charisma, but that is one thing it is lacking. As a musician and performer, I've performed at the Fishhead Cantina, but it's a little bit off the beaten path, so to say. If you've ever been to Arbutus, there's one main strip that most of the commerce takes place on. So I think this bill specifically, I know, will help us with Okamoka, the coffee shop, to establish a foothold in the community for live music and events, and this would really help us go a long ways as far as bringing the community together, both UMBC students, people in Catonsville and Arbutus, to Arbutus specifically, to hear live music, to gather, to enjoy time together, and hopefully help this community thrive. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both for coming in, and please give my regards to Mr. Tom Moore and Mr. Freeman Bravowski as well. And appreciate all the work you guys are doing in Arbutus. I really holds a lot of promise, so thanks again. All right, our next speaker, Mr. Ty Ford, followed by John Murphy. Ty?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give my time to the rest of whoever needs it, and I think you've done a spectacular job in rewriting. It makes sense to me. I know there were questions before, and I think you and whomever else has worked on it has done a stellar job of doing that. So the council and you specifically, thank you so much for your efforts on our behalf.
Thank you, and I appreciate all your feedback. It was helpful, and a lot of really good feedback from people that we really try to incorporate, and so thank you, Mr. Ford. Mr. John, I call him Jack Murphy. If you guys want to come on up? Thank you, Mr. Murphy, and also former councilman John Murphy, too. So thank you for your constant public service to the community. What's that?
Planning board member.
Planning board. Jack has done it all. He really has. And poor guy, every time he needs something, I'm constantly calling him. So thank you for being here. Appreciate all your help. Our next speaker, Michael Rogers, followed by Chris Powell. Mr. Rogers? Thank you for coming in, and thanks also for your patience. I know it's been a little long work session.
Chairman Quirk, council members, thank you for your service and always looking out for the benefit of residents of our county. I want to say that initially I came in against because I didn't get a chance to read the amended document. I have to commend you, Chairman Quirk, for the back and forth trying to shine light on what this bill was about and is supposed to accomplish. The work that you did in the amendments, I thought took an onerous bill and made it very specific and easy to understand to get the point across what you were trying to make. I was battling some of those people on Facebook and said, hold on, let's just wait and see what comes out. So I'm not against the bill as it currently is written. I appreciate the work and effort that you put in and your team has put in, and I hope the bill passes. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. I also appreciate all your input, too, because rest assured we put some of the amendments in from what you and Ty and others had said, so thank you. Our next speaker, Chris Powell, followed by Joseph Carroll. Good afternoon, Mr. Powell.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, fellow members. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. When I first arrived, I thought that I would spend 3 minutes basically getting digs in on said Mr. Chairman. But I got to tell you, we're looking over this amendment. We're more than floored by what we saw here in the amended documents, because so much of what was removed were things that we just kept giving thumbs up, should have been removed. What was included, or how things were, certain portions were reworded, were largely very impressive. And so I don't have a lot to say in opposition to this bill anymore, and I had come in here thinking I was not in favor of it. That's not the case any longer. One thing I do have a question about, line 7, findings and purpose section. I'm confused. I'm a little unsure as to why that word initially is put there. This section is to initially establish reasonable regulations for the presentation of live musical entertainment in the Arbutus and Catonsville commercial districts. So you've specified Arbutus and Catonsville. You've been more than clear about mentioning those two together versus just Baltimore County at large. So I appreciated that. But why is that word initially, if I could pose a question to a chairman at this time, why is the word initially put there?
Yeah, we wanted to see how it's going to work. I mean, we wanted to see if this is going to be successful, because we only have one intention, believe me. I'm not working for the anti-live music lobby or any of these things. We have one intention, which is simply to promote live music. And so this is sort of a test case.
Okay.
And if it actually does what's intended to do, we hope to learn from this, and maybe with my colleagues' support, maybe bring it to other places, because with certainty I know that there's a lot of people that really want live music, and there's a lot of businesses that truly do check themselves, and they restrain themselves because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble, especially if they get an angry neighbor or maybe a business owner doesn't agree. But, I mean, Mr. Boswick, do you have anything else to say on that?
That's exactly the reason, Mr. Chair. I would think those words would come out if and when this bill, after it has, as you indicate, worked for a while, can be something that is a model countywide.
So that's very fair. I'm assuming the whole reason that that this test case is put in place at this time is because you, as business and personal investments, and you mitigate potential failures and things, you have pretty good reason for believing this is going to succeed in the first place. You wouldn't have been putting this out. So, okay, that's fair to say. So the goal then is really to I'm not going to say push, because it's not even necessarily bad anymore, the way it's written now, but to certainly impress upon greater Baltimore County at large, this is the goal. Is this not the ultimate goal?
I hope so, but
Okay.
if we find out this has unintended consequences, if it somehow doesn't promote live music, believe me, we'll fix it, because all
Okay.
we want to see is this thing to work, and we want to have live music, and we want people in Baltimore County to know that we do like live music, because as Councilman Patoka says, these are ways we really revitalize, especially our older towns and our businesses. And I personally was just at Ellicott City Live Music Festival. I loved it. This is stuff that I think really works, so we're listening.
Well, I could have easily been one of those nutcases you referred to earlier, but I refrained. I held back, and then, believe me, when I saw some of the other things that some of my contemporaries were writing in the musical genre, I felt much less of a nut just by virtue of reading their comments. So I'm glad I held back, and this is much better than I thought it could have been. In its written form, I have no problems with it as it's stated, and live long and prosper. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I got a question for you. Mr. Powell, are you a musician?
I am, but I'm certainly the least of among musicians compared to people like Mr. Rogers and others, so that's fine.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to give your band a plug.
No. Oh, our band, The Cultivated. We do 80s alternative rock specifically.
Okay.
We're definitely
The
niche
Cultivators?
Yes, sir.
The Cultivators, 80s rock.
You get a chance to see us, come on out.
Thank you.
Where are you
Thanks so
playing
much.
next?
Michael's in November, and the Tower upstairs in Hartford County the last Saturday in December.
Thanks. Planners love live music.
Thank you. Hope to see you in Arbutus and Catonsville. All right, our next speaker, Joseph Carroll, followed by David Mister.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I appreciate the opportunity to come up here. I'm going to echo what the last two gentlemen said. I came in here with a lot of concerns based on what I read in the original bill. Once I read the amended bill, I have to say I'm very impressed with the way it came out. There were some things that I felt and some of my associates felt were pretty vague in the original version of the bill, and it's come down to very specific language now, and I can't say I see anything wrong with it. This is something that looks like it's a good idea. I mean, me personally, having been in and around the bar business for almost 30 years now, I've been a DJ for 23 years. I kind of favor more of a hands-off approach, but I do understand, you have complex problems with zoning and all that, so you have to do something about it. But this is an excellent start, I think.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming in. Thanks for your patience as well.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, David Mister, followed by George Harmon. Mr. Mister, good to see you. Appreciate your help as well. Your help and Rob Hoffman, Chris Mudd, Tom Boswick, Laura Bacon, Eric Lyon. We had a lot of attorneys wrestling with this one for the last
Thank you,
5
Mr. Chairman,
days.
members of the council. I'm schizophrenic on this bill. I have a number of clients in the Arbutus and Catonsville area, Oak Creek Lodge on Main Street, Arbutus, and I represented Leon's Triple L before them, 818 Market, Catonsville Gourmet. The Fadleys are negotiating to buy the Plymouth Wallpaper location and put a microbrewery in there, and I'm representing them. I'm also the past president of the UMBC Alumni Association, a graduate there. But because I've been general counsel for Baltimore County Licensed Beverage Association, Mr. Milani's group, started out in 1984 with Dutch Ruppersberger. We were co-counsel of them. I represent the majority of the restaurants in Baltimore County and a significant portion of the taverns. I also happen to represent Dock of the Bay back in the day. Mr. Gaskins and I were honorable opponents in that. I won my case in the Court of Appeals, but I was dealing with the alcoholic beverages regulation and not the zoning part. That was Mr. Holzer's burden. My concern is two. One, I echo what Mr. Milani said. I'd like to see this more broadly applied. I'm concerned about what effect it may have on some of the things, such as, Mr. Cotroco, when he was the zoning commissioner, had approved an accessory use for live entertainment at Riverwatch, which is a BL zone. I'd like to see those opportunities continue to be extended to other restaurants in BL zones. And I believe, I can't say this authoritatively, I would say probably the majority of the restaurants in Baltimore County are in BL zones. So I wouldn't want to see them left out. But I also have some, and I guess what I'd like to take my last minute or so to address the issues having to do with due process, because I was particularly concerned with the way this was originally written. I think it's gotten a little bit better. I still think the cart's before the horse, because we're giving the director that power to grant the license and revoke the license or suspend it, and you don't get a hearing until afterwards. I'd rather see that the hearing occur before any suspension or revocation, and what the director should do is issue a show cause notice, very much like the Liquor Board does, have a hearing at which the preponderance burden is established, and then make a ruling, which could then be appealed to either to the Circuit Court or the Board of Appeals. I think probably the appeal, or at least the due process hearing, should be before an administrative law judge, frankly, because rather than have the director be the one issuing it and also deciding if it's going to take it away. Right now, the director issues the license, he can suspend it, and then he has a hearing on the appeal as to whether or not he should have suspended it. I don't think it's pretty likely that he's going to overturn his initial decision, even if he has the burden of showing that it's done by preponderance of the evidence. So I'd like us to try and work on that.
And I really do appreciate your feedback and your input and help, and along with your team's help. And we'll definitely take it under advisement, and definitely if this went countywide, I think what you're saying makes a heck of a lot of sense as well. And right now, it's such a small part of the area. Believe me, we'll definitely be looking at it because we hear what you're saying. Thank you. Appreciate you coming in. Our next speaker, George Harmon, followed by Craig Hopewood. And good afternoon, Mr. Harmon.
Good afternoon. Before I sit down and have this stupid clock start running, which takes up my time, I wanted to say it's been very entertaining today. We had a lot of issues with the Monsanto PCB issue. I managed the state's first PCB inspection program. I established the state's fish tissue monitoring program. I managed the health advisories that went out to the state. So I enjoyed hearing it all. I just wish I could have stood up and joined in on that particular hearing.
Yeah.
Portion of the hearing.
Appreciate you coming in. I appreciate your service to the community.
Okay, my name's George Harmon, and the clock's running. I'm retired from the state of Maryland, and amongst the programs that I did manage that I've already mentioned, I had a one-person noise control program for the entire state. We were a state model, and everybody across the country would check on us, call on us, and we would send people out to the state, to the other states to help them. I'm very concerned with the original bill. I didn't get a chance to see any amendments, so I'm a little perturbed that your process doesn't get those posted well in advance of this particular hearing, work session. The noise program, as you may or may not know, was with the state of Maryland. We used to get irritated constantly by the zoning in Baltimore County, which would allow things to be juxtaposed one to another. And the only resolution was a state resolution. So Jonas Jacobson, formerly of DEPS, was the deputy secretary at the time. And we were cutting money, and he cut the noise program, which was one person. Didn't involve me because I had 50 other people working for me. But then when Jonas came here, I reminded Jonas that he recommended that the counties pick up the state noise program in lieu of the state. And he then said, well, you know, I've changed my mind. I think the state ought to take it back. And I said, well, this county's never picked it up. So there are no comprehensive regulations in Baltimore County.
That's right.
And that's the main concern. Noise is noise no matter whether it's live music, canned music, or any other type of music. Or noise, for that matter, any kind of noise. So I do believe that this bill is going to have some specific standards associated with it. And I would very much like to offer my services as the former manager of the state noise control program to the county in setting up this program. I just don't want to see another mistake made where the citizens of the adjacent areas, the residents, are going to be highly irritated by noise levels. You can't imagine how irritated residents can be until you're on the phone talking to them when they say, there's nothing I can do.
Right.
It's the county's fault. And that's when that was my perspective when I was with the state, and my perspective today is a little bit of noise can be highly irritating. And I've had little old ladies call me up and say, I'm going to shoot that SOB, I guess I can say SOB, talking about certain types of noise.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of concerns that I had. I had to forward that particular call to the Secretary's office and say there's physical harm about to occur because of noise. And that was another particular issue. So I take it very seriously, and I hope you take it very seriously and have some very specific standards associated with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon, and I think it's a reason why we kept the user permit part in there as well, to have some type of control and check. But I'll definitely have Mr. Bostwick reach out and talk to you, because I think you hit a really good point. We want to make sure we have the right balance here, because we want to have live music. We like live music. I've learned a lot about live music in the last couple of weeks, and including the noise ordinance and how it's mostly residential, really doesn't affect much from the business side. And so I hear what you're saying, and it's something that maybe we can work through, make sure we have the right balance, because we want live music, but we don't want it where it's being uncontrolled, where now all the neighbors are upset and they feel like there's nothing they can do, because the businesses really want live music to work, and they also want their neighbors to be their customers. And so a lot of times it hopefully does self-police, but I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your testimony.
We can always blame Mr. Quirk for promoting the bill if the citizens complain. Is that the way we can do this?
You know what? It's a tough one. I'll tell you, never in my wildest dreams did I ever think. I think this might be as hard as one other bill. I don't know. I'm going to mention the name.
One parting thought. Politically, I'm very much on the R side of things, but when it comes to noise, I find myself supporting the underdog, the residents. So I'm bifurcated. I'm different. But Dock of the Bay was one of my first noise cases that was brought to my attention when I was working.
And I think it's a legitimate concern, so thank you. Appreciate it. Our next speaker, Craig Hopewood, followed by Sheila Ruth, and then Steve Whalen as our last speaker. So Craig Hopewood, Sheila Ruth, and Steve Whalen. Hopwood. Craig Hopwood. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the County Council. I don't know what to say. I walked in here wanting to argue a whole lot of things from the old bill, and the amended bill literally answers all my questions.
Great.
I did have a couple of questions, though, about some of the applications. What is a CCC overlay?
Commercial. It's basically a commercial revitalization type of zone, and it's areas we're really trying to focus on revitalizing and getting more spark to them, and promoting small business, and just has a little extra incentives and yeah.
So in Catonsville, where would that apply specifically? Just Frederick Road?
Actually, you know what? If you you can email, or you can see Laura Bacon afterward, and she can send you the actual map with the boundary lines as well. Yep.
Okay, because there's various situations in town, like the Baltimore County Arts Guild's Gallery at 1101 open mic, where we're not in either situation, but we do have live entertainment twice a month. And just wondering how that would fit into the scenario, especially since it's not paid performances. It's just common folks coming in and playing music.
Right. You know, this bill is just focused on the very specific area, and we're not even addressing anything else. And I think most things probably will continue the way they're continuing unless there's some issue. And then eventually, hopefully, we'll look at a county-wide solution, possibly, that I think most of my colleagues would be in favor of, if it's done the right way and properly balances things. So I understand your...
And the other question I would have is about residential entertainment. Somebody has a party and they invite a band over, or they invite a number of friends to bring their instruments and have a jam session. My question would be is will the neighbors have a reason to be able to call us off on that?
I would defer to Mr. Bostwick on that one. Because
I would say that would just, as a personal use type of situation, that would be governed by, general noise ordinances, disturbing the peace laws, common laws, things like that. This bill would not impact or affect those types of situations.
Okay. And last but not least, who takes the decibel readings? Because that's primarily where you're going to have complaints, is volume.
Yeah, and I think we'll look at that, working together with our Director of Permits, Approvals, and Inspections. And there's an app on the phone? Councilman Koch says there's an app on the phone? I mean, it's something that there's more work to be considered here, but that's one of the reasons, too, to really focus this right now on a smaller area. And as we learn and adapt best practices, and fix and modify where we need to make sure it truly is finding that proper balance that fits well for everyone as much as possible.
Yeah, because, cop shows up and says, you got to turn it down or shut it down. What do we do?
Turn it down.
Well, I know that, but I'm just saying any official way of registering that.
It's something I think a lot of these things are handled almost on a case-by-case basis, and a lot of hopefully good common sense comes into this, and neighbors working together with neighbors. And on the commercial side, if we get out of control or something that's adversely backfiring, that's where we take the user permit and we use some enforcement there. Because we really hope that the vast majority of businesses, and I strongly believe the vast majority of businesses want to work really, really well with the community because they're their customers. And so most of it's really self-policing. This is more just about the bad apple that makes everybody else look bad because they're not finding that balance. But I know most business owners I know just want to make sure they have great relationships with their neighbors and customers. And so I think for the vast majority of people, I hope they never even have to worry about PAI. It's only the people that could threaten, the vitality of most local musicians. They're the ones we're after, but hopefully they're a very small percent. But believe me, unfortunately, they're out there. And one or two will pop their head up, and when they do, we'll hopefully hammer it down.
Yes, indeed.
All righty.
I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate coming in. Our next speaker is Sheila Ruth, and then our last speaker, Steve Whalen. And again, thank everybody for your patience, and thank you all for sticking around. It's been a little longer work session, but most of our work sessions are pretty long anymore. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think it's worth briefly stating. As your bill, as it was originally drafted, was for those two commercial revitalization districts, Arbutus and Catonsville. When we circulated it to the zoning office, to PAI and the zoning office, I believe it was the zoning office that suggested that it be sort of more refined to be permitted in those two districts, but with that CCC overlay district.
Right.
And what the CCC overlay district is known as the Commercial, Community Core District. And what that is an overlay. As you've seen on the zoning maps, you'll see an underlying zone, then a hyphen, then an overlay. And this is an overlay that can be applied, and I'm reading it very briefly. CCC districts may be applied only to certain existing or proposed centers of shopping and auxiliary commercial activity which are on lands zoned BL, BM, and or BR. So it's really designed for those those three business zones. Any one of which, providing shopping opportunities for convenience goods, appliances, and optionally furniture. I don't know why that's in there like that. And include one or more junior department stores or variety stores. So that kind of dovetails with, I believe, the commercial revitalization districts as well. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Ruth.
Chairman Quirk and members of the County Council, for the record, my name is Sheila Ruth, and I live in District 1. I promise I will be brief. I'm here in support of Bill 4419. As Chairman Quirk said, I saw a lot of misinformation on social media about this, and it was clear to me, even in the original form, that the intent was to expand live music, not to restrict it. And I think that the amendments, Chairman Quirk has really engaged with all of the stakeholders, and the amendments really address all of the issues. I think the revised bill is great. And I also want to commend Chairman Quirk for passing out the amendments before the hearing so that we could look at them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. I appreciate that. And thanks to Mr. Bostwick and Laura Bacon and Eric Lamb and David Whitaker and a whole group of people, that David Mister, Jack Milani, the list goes on, and all the citizens, too, that really did give a lot of good feedback. And so it was definitely a good team effort. Good afternoon, almost evening, Mr. Whalen.
And the last shall be brief. How ironic is it that Music City, Maryland, the other name for Catonsville, can't play live music. Give me a break. Give me a break. I want to commend you on your effort to bring this important aspect to Catonsville and Arbutus. I think it deserves the support of the council. If anything, I'd like to see you make the restrictions less restrictive, because I think noise is noise regardless of where it emanates from, and the bottom line is if you violate the noise ordinance, you're going to get your knuckles rapped. And that's the way that it should be. It may take some time to get there. I understand that. You want to be cautious going in. But I think that's the direction you should move in, that you really make it a permitted use, and those people who misbehave end up having a problem. I also think that it's important to remember that a lot of these are going to occur in both restaurants with liquor licenses and taverns. Going to be a heavy user of this type of amenity, and they are regulated by the liquor board. Misbehave with noise or parking issues or loud and boisterous activity, and boy, are you going to get your knuckles rapped by the liquor board. So there is policing there. Lastly, I know we just talked about the fact that the planning office looked at this and honed it, as Mr. Bostwick said, and imposed the CCC district, which kindly eliminated my proposed project at Arbutus Station. And I want to tell you that that's important for us. As you know, we've worked hard to make that project work, make the numbers work. Having live music there would be very beneficial. And so whether it's change this bill or have you consider adding a CCC overlay to that particular area, that piece of property, would make this work. But absolutely, this bill makes all the sense in the world. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen, and I appreciate your very significant investment in Arbutus and in Catonsville, and you're definitely somebody who puts his own resources on the line to help the area. So thank you as a business owner who does a lot of good stuff for our community as well. All right, any last, Councilman Patoka?
Yes, since we've been talking about live music and musicians, I want to put a plug in for another musician that's here today, John Lee and the Wafflers.
Oh, yeah.
So, John, where are you guys playing? Okay, never mind. Mr. Secretary, please strike those comments from the record.
Redact. Any other final closing comments from any of the members before we all go to our favorite live music venue and maybe grab a beer? Is everybody good? All right. Well, thank you all. Please have a safe drive home, and thanks for everybody for your input and help on the bill. Take care.